Quote from Aussie Cossack: I consider myself a proponent of a strong Russian state. We will always support the policies of the Russian state. We respect very much our Commander-in-Chief Putin, and we have a unique capacity to support Russia from within a hostile state. Even the SB or battalion of the Russian SAS can't achieve that, because unlike them, we are citizens of this state. The group that Bolshevik leads, Simeon, claims to have about 150 members, although the group is registered as a historical cultural association. Its members appear to be militarized. They wear uniforms with etapults and badges of rank, carry out Cossack military drills, but according to Boviop, Simeon, they see their main task is carrying out so-called people's diplomacy. We organise demonstrations in support of the return of Crimea to Russia, in support of our army in Syria, and support of the Donetsk and Lugansk people's battles. Sorry, I say those wrong republics. The Ataman adds that while they cannot go into battle with sabres, Russian long-fired rifles and maximum machine guns, as their grandfathers did, they can persecute another form of war, an information war. You really trust this guy? I don't. The strange case of Putin's self-declared fifth column in Australia. 12th August 2020. Members of the Australian-Russian community taking part in annual celebrations marking the surrender of Nazi Germany may have been startled in recent years by a group of burly men inspecting what they were wearing. Some of the men were clad in dark green dress uniforms with etapults and medals, others were metal stud leathers favoured by motorcycle games. They wore a pink, orange and black ribbon arranged in a neat bow pinned to their chests. This arrangement, known as George's ribbon, was originally an insignia of the Russian Imperial Army, the orange symbolising fire and black gunpowder. At the source of Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, it has become a badge of devotion to Russia and fidelity to its presidents, according to Moscow-based journalists. I can't even say those names, sorry. Courageous and expert commentators on sometimes delicate security issues. It is an ominous and aggressive political system of the anti-Western pro-Kremlin agenda. The mysterious men on the May 9 celebrations claim to be descendants of Siberian Cossacks who settled in Australia mainly from around the 1920s to the 1950s, because the anniversary has become the most important date of the official Russian calendar, a day on which they believe wearing the ribbon should be compulsory. They attend the celebrations to monitor whether community members are displaying correct symbol and, what's more, displaying it correctly. They are prefix of patriotism, monitoring Russian expressions, loyalty to Mother Russia and Vladimir Putin. Beyond the activities of these men is long, complex histories of the Cossacks. Even the origin of the name, I'm not going to try and butcher that, is disputed, but most historians say it's Turkish. It meant free wanderer or exile, and that by the 15th century it denoted the ethnically motably inhabitants, often Tatar and Slav, or self-governing fortified settlements along the lower Dnieper and Don rivers. By the 16th century, the Cossacks had evolved from brigade into effective light cavalry for hire. Through agreements with successive Tsars, they were integrated into Russian Imperial Army, with particular responsibility for protecting the empire's southern borders. They were prominent in what Russian official histories call opening up Siberia. Gradually, the Cossacks took on another function too, a paramilitary police used to suppress dissident and internal unrest. By the 19th century, they were both a border force and a national guard with a reputation for brutal discipline in carrying out their ground-to-maid function. As the New York Times writer puts it, before the revolution, they'd become infamous as the nail as the Tsarist boot, putting down peasant work and working uprisers as leading programs against the Jews and other minorities. Cossack historians might reject that charge, but there can be little doubt that the Cossacks took part of the programs against the Jewish population in the Pale of the settlement after the assassination of Tsar Alexander II in 1881, and those in period of 1903-06. In the early 20th century, the Cossack motto, "For the faith, the Tsar and the fatherland," was adopted by the Anti-Semitic Union of the Russian people, which created armed squads known as Black Hundreds to carry out programs assassinate those that identified as socialists or other brands of traitor. Given their devotion to the Romanov dynasty, most Cossacks sided with the anti-Bolshevik forces in the Russian Civil War in 1918-21. Many then fled into exile, with some from Serbia finding refuge in China and eventually Australia. As a particular target of Stalin's ruthless collectivism campaign, those who remained were almost obliterated, and they continued to be suppressed throughout the Soviet period. But in remarkable revival, they re-emerged in post-Soviet Russia as a repository of militarist and ultranationalist views. Close ties to the Kremlin-dominated Russian Orthodox Church under Putin, they have flourished where he has eugenized them for the well-known traditional patriotism. So very important for the formation of Russia's statehood in the minds of our people. The Russian government now funds Cossack cultural centres and material arts and firearm clubs, and under the law Putin signed in 2005, the Cossacks have been reincorporated into state security and military structures. Till Mikhail Gorbachev became General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union in 1985, all Soviet leaders saw the large Russian-Soviet diaspora as a two contradictory ways, as a popular source of opposition and as an asset to be mobilized together with non-Russian sympathizers in undermining any state perceived to be an advisory. Primary responsibility for neutralizing members of the former, in some cases by assassination, and identifying and exploiting the later group laid with KGB under that or earlier names. In Australia, the best-known instances were Moscow's marshalling, and in some cases recruitment of members of the Communist Party of Australia and Russian emigres, some working in sensitive positions in the Australian public service. The effects of that policy were felt in Australian politics until recently, and many may still colour perceptions of Russia. As the Soviet Union began to flatter in the late 80s and Soviet-backed communist parties of the West shrank, the policy of recruiting immigrants and fellow travellers fell into abeyance. During the 9 chaotic years of Boris Yeltsin's rule, after the rollout of the KGB initiated and led coup to overthrow Gorbachev in 1991, the Russian intelligence service manoeuvred to adapt and survive. The KGB was divided into the SFB, the Domestic Secret Police, and the SRV, the Foreign Russian Intelligence Service, but was not reformed. Now, after almost 2 decades with one of their own as a Russian ruler, they are probably better resourced and, in the FSB's case, at least more independently powerful than before. Under Putin, efforts to tap into Russian diaspora as an asset have been refined and strengthened. In October 2001, while still consolidating his power, Putin set out a concept of diaspora as a tribute to the strong Russian state, proclaiming the notion of Russian mir, or the Russian word. Mir is a capacious word meaning world, community, or peace, depending on the context. No matter where they may live, said Putin, all Russians, and all those claiming Russian heritage would henceforth be seen not as emigres but as compatriots, a global tribe dispersed by a united commitment to the fatherland. Ruski Mir is also the title of the flanks of new state agency and foundations Putin had put charge, creating this coercion and maximising Russia's global influence. Russia is not alone on this. Of course, China, for instance, has a virtually identical policy of mounting and mobilising patriotic feeling in the diaspora, the implementation of which, coordinated by the Communist Party's United Front Work Department, the Russian Mir Foundation, also records the Overseas Compatriots Central Committee established by the Japanese in the 1940s. The foundation was formally established in 2007, and in 2009 its regional director for the Asia-Pacific approached a member of leading Australian universities, including Queensland, Sydney and the ANU, offering to fund centres of Russian language and culture. These offers were declined partly because the Russians insisted on the right to appoint the centres directors. More recently, the policy of marshalling the diaspora has also been underpinned by the law on state policy towards compatriots abroad, key provisions of which were reflected in the recent amendments to the Russian constitution. The law defines anyone who speaks Russian and identifies with, observes those values of the associated culture as a compatriot, whose rights, as they are defined by the Russian state undertakes to protect. As it happens, the Rajewski Mir Foundation, which China Confucius Institutes claim to focus solely on propagating culture and language, is headed by the prominent member of the State Duma, the parliament endowed with Putin's characteristics. That Duma deputy happens to be the grandson of Stalin's foreign minister. I can't even say that name, sorry. This guy. Of the notorious Molo played a part in the key role in the fate of the Labour Party H.B. Burt Everett, one of the most prominent casualties of the Petrov affair, the case that shone a spotlight in the Russian recruitment of immigrants and supporters in Australia, which brings us back to Australia and the ribbon-monitoring Cossacks. In the New Year's Eve address in the end of 2018, the then Russian ambassador, Grigory Loganvik, sorry for butchering that, made a passionate appeal to Russian desposia in Australia. Never before in this recent history has Russia been subjected to such a coordinated, aggressive campaign of vilification, abuse and slander on various anti-Russian themes, be it MH17 disaster and the so-called Skripal affair or the use of chemical weapons in Syria. We in the embassy have been more grateful for any support, moral or political, that our compatriots can give within, of course, the bounds of permitted under Australian legislation. A lot of people say MH17 wasn't actually real, that MH17 was MH370 repainted. So the group, along his audience, needed no urging the self-proclaimed garrison of Serbian Cossacks in Australia, calling themselves the Embassy to Australia. These Australians claim to be descendants of Cossacks and the repository of their tradition. They first made their presence felt in 2014, the year of Russia's annexation of Crimea and the uprising of Russian proxy forces in eastern Ukraine. Among who Russian-based Cossacks were conspicuous, citing no source for figure. A Russian website asserts that 10,000 Australians have Cossack forebearers. Bedecked in locally tailored Cossack dress uniforms, Australia's newly minted Cossacks began to mount demonstrations in Sydney and Melbourne in support of the so-called Democratic Republics of Donetsk and Lugansk, that is, the territory of Ukraine that is still held by Russian-led and equipped proxy forces. A leader, Simeon Boycott, also known, has emerged with the title Ataman. The word means chieftain, and is a congregate of Ottoman, reflecting the strong Turkic gene in the Cossacks' evolution. Russian website supplies the following information about him. Ataman Boycott was born in 1990, the fifth generation of original migrant family. He relates that his father is a Russian Orthodox priest whose family succeeded in preserving the Russian language and raised its children to love Russia. We never felt ourselves to be Australian. We were aliens there. I consider myself to be a Russian. A period of study in the Shukhansky Monastery in Moscow, which he undertook in 2008, was decisive in his identification with Russia. One may state that while I was studying there, I was, well, we must not say recruited, right? Basically, I fell under the influence, rightly thinking pro-Russian elements. They began to fashion a pro-Russian adult from a young Australian citizen. He credits his transformation to a particular father, Tikhon Strukhanov. This is the most influential person in the church, in the state, in the society. He has always supported strongly any activity connecting with recruiting, uniting Orthodox churches outside Russia with the Moscow Patriarch, and in general uniting with Russian immigrants, the diaspora in Russia. His wife is apparently the daughter of one of these high-up men. That's who his wife is. The Shukhansky Monastery, which is close by the headquarters of the KGB in central Moscow, is reported to have close ties to the KGB successors in the SFB and the SRV. Father Strukhanov, now Archcommandrate, is sometimes called Putin's special advisor. Here, Boykovich is reported by the Russian Digital Journal under the headline "Cossacks in Australia speak up of supporting Russia in a hostile country." I consider myself a proponent of a strong Russian state. We will always support the policies of the Russian state. We respect very much our Commander-in-Chief Putin, and we have a unique capacity to support Russia from within a hostile state. Even the SFB or the battalion of the Russian SAS can't achieve that because, unlike them, we are citizens of this state. The group that Bolshevik leads claims to have about 150 members. Although the group is registered as a historical cultural association, its members appear to be militarized. They wear uniforms with etapults and badges of rank, carry out Cossack military drills, but according to Boykovich, they see their main task as carrying out so-called people's diplomacy. We organise demonstrations in support of the return of Crimea to Russia, in support of our army in Syria, and in support of Donetsk looks are not people republics. The Adaman adds that while they cannot go into battles with sabres, Russian long rifles and Maxim machine guns, as their grandfathers did, they can persecute another form of war, an information war. Boykovich seems to have been a key figure in securing funding from Russia for the publication of the garrison's own monthly newspaper, Russian Frontier, 26 issues of which appeared from early 2015 to mid-2017, initially with a print run of 2,000, later increased to 5,000. The masthead carried the traditional Cossack motto and war cry for the Russian Orthodox faith, the Tsar and the Fatherland. The paper title suggests that its owners and editors see the Russian Frontier as running through Australia, which recalls the bon mot from the Russian history that only a border with Russian soldiers on both sides of it is generally secure. The notion is also consistent with the Cossacks' traditional role of protecting Russia's borders. The editors and its reports, reprinted from ultranationalist Russian sources, reflected the group's identification with the militaristic imperialist and authoritarian ethos of the Tsarist, now Putin's Russia. Its members declared their support for Russian campaign of the eastern Ukraine, adopted the flag of the separatist entities as one of their own banners, and implied that some of their number fought there with the proxy forces. The paper branded as traitors any Australian or Russian origin who do not share the views. It routinely rallied alluringly xenophobic and homophobic views, and in the edition of 2015, for instance, anti-Semitic comments. Russian Rubsba ceased publication without explanation in June 17, suggesting that the source of its funding had dried up. 3 years on, in mid-May this year, it reappeared with a print run of 5,000, a supplement in English, and a much wider circulation to all state capitals. Clearly a new source of funding had been found, perhaps by Bulkov during a visit to Moscow late last year. We remind all our compatriots in Australia who are enemies of Russia that our newspaper is back on the battle line. He said in the May editorial, "Take responsibilities for your words and your actions, lest you find yourself exposed as the subjects of our publications." As before, the paper identifies its chief sponsor as the Institute of North Asia, Eurasian International Processes, about which the internet reveals little other than an address in Chita, a city in Zabanskis region of Serbia. But the paper appears to owe its reanimation to Konstantin Malfi, a figure conspicuous in Russia as the Orthodox oligarch, or to those who he works for or with. Together with his ties to the Russian Orthodox Church, he is well known for his ultranationalization, championing of traditional values, and propagation of conspiracy theories, along with the later his assertions that Bill Gates and Western intelligence agencies are the source of, and that Gates plans to the entire Russian population. The sources of his wealth are mysterious. Best known for the role he played in the insurgency in East Ukraine. In April 2014, Igor Girkin, former head of security for one of the private equity firms Marshall Capital Partners, crossed from Russia into Ukraine with about 50 fighters and led the first armed assault of the Ukrainian government entity. Girkin eventually took command of the People's Army of the Republic of Donetsk and then became its Minister of Defense. He served with the SSV from 1998 to 2005 and had since been identified by the European Union as an officer of the main intelligence directorate and the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, or GRU, better known by his nom de guerre, meaning the rifleman or the shooter, regardless. By mid-2014 reports, the investigative website Bellingcat, a clear pattern emerged. The Kremlin used Moscow as an initiator of the proxy funder to activate measures, including military operations in Ukraine, providing a deniability to Russia in case the operation failed. In this way, he and his employees shared responsibility for the deaths of 38 Australians and 260 other passengers on the crew of flight MH17 in July 2014. Since 2014, he has been sanctioned by the European Union for destabilisation of eastern Ukraine. And this man, Simeon, is best friends with this bloke. He also claims to be the founder of the Society of the Double-Headed Eagle for the Propagation of Russian Historical Enlightenment, which takes its name from the imperial eagle of the Tsarist coat of arms restored by Putin as Russia's. The society heads a revivist list of partners published by, as its name suggests, its declared goal is to enlighten all compatriots by calculating the correct view of history in the minds of all inhabitants of the Russian world. This impulse to control not just what people do, but also what they think, has a robust tradition in Russia, stretching back to at least Peter the Great and reaching an apogee under Lenin and Stalin. Putin himself is a product of the training, practice, and the ethos of the KGB, the successor of the Chekra, the Soviet agency Lenin set up to impose and maintain this perverse control. Putin's former cultural minister, Vladimir Medinsky, has written that if the state's elite do not strive to mould the consciousness of the citizens, their minds will either be a vacuum or polluted by foreign garbage. Much preoccupied with controlling the past so as to mould the present, Putin recently arranged for the goal defined by Medinsky to be enshrined by the Russian constitution. That was among more than 200 amendments voted in the Russians' recent constitutional plebiscite, which ran from 25th of June to July 1. According to official figures, the amendments were endorsed by 78% of the 69% of the eligible voters who participated. In an apparent misstep in orchestrating the result, though, or perhaps a display of arrogance, copies of the revised constitution were on sale in Moscow bookstores well in advance of the voting period. A group of well-known Russian political scientists who analysed the figures concluded that 37% of the votes were falsified, and that the real turnout figure was about 43%, of which 65% voted for the amendments. Reporting at the urging of the Russian Orthodox Church, the amendments also included the article pledging homage to the ancestors who bequeathed to us their ideals and belief in God. Yet Article 14, the foundational chapter 1 of the 1993 Constitution, defines Russia as a secular state and says that no religion may be established as official or obligatory. Another amendment describes marriage as a union of man and woman, thereby conforming traditional values and effectively outlawing same-sex marriage. And another pledge to protect historical truth and forbid belittling the people's heroic protection of the fatherland. That is, curing Putin's increasingly mendacious version of the history of the Second World War. The State Duma also received a redraft of existing federal law on education in which greater emphasis is placed on the imperative of installing patriotic sentiments in school children. All of the goals defined by those amendments are pervasive themes of the re-emerged paper. According to Russian journalists who have investigated Konstantin Malovsky's activities and links, he is close to Putin, confident. Father Tikhon, identified by Adam Burkov as his primary mentor. And that guy, this primary mentor, I think is his wife's father. Ostensibly serving under Malafy in the double-headed Eagle Society is its exclusive director, Lenin General, has him working in espionage abroad from 1976 to 2009. From 2009 to 2017, he was director of the Center for Hellenical Research, a secretive unit in the Russian presidential administration, credited by Reuters and the BBC with a significant role in the successful Russian campaign to influence the US president. Oh, what a load of shit. Officially, this guy. And this is a guy who I think is that woman's father, his wife's father, has now retired from active service, but Putin's famously said there's no such thing as former KGB officer. On retirement, SSV and SRV officers are considered to be members of a reserve from which they can be recalled to active service at any time. In Moscow, the double-headed Eagle Society is registered as an address shared with the Center for Hellenical Research. It seems most unlikely that Lieutenant General of the SRV would take his orders from a private citizen, Malofy. To conduct the Society's campaign to ensure all that Russians in Australia and their children hold the correct views and beliefs, he has appointed a young Russian entrepreneur going places as his chief Australian representative, with Boykov as his deputy. A leader of their appointment, published in the paper, charges them with preserving the cultural identity and correct historical memory of our compatriots. In an interview to introduce Malovsky to his readers, asked him what he sought to achieve, he replied that the society he heads unites people of integrity, Russian patriots who wish to change the situation of their homeland and perceptions of Russia beyond its borders for the better. And asked how Russians differed from Australia, he replied that Russians have deeper emotions, are more hard-working, stand for traditional values. We believe that a woman's role is to preserve hearth and home, whereas Australian women are feminists who do not put family first, and we are more patriotic. Elsewhere in the same edition, the work of Double-Headed Eagle Society is presented thus. Russian history is one of the most slandered and truded phenomena in human history. The task of recreating a genuine, multi-hued, faceted, objective reality of Russia in history is akin to a restoration, slowly layer by layer. The correct creations of recent periods must be peeled away to reveal the original image of Russia in its all pristine beauty. To sum up, we have a group of Australians of Russian heritage calling themselves Australian Cossack garrisons, funded by the Russian Orthodox oligarchs, or perhaps by anonymous state foundries who channel money to him. Their Patreon was complacent in the destruction of MH17, claims that Bill Gates and Western Intelligence Services are the creators of, and is supervised by the former senior officer of the SRV, and therefore effectively incorporated into Russia's security and military structures, and they themselves are dictated to policing devotion to the fatherland among Russians in the hostile country which they apparently prefer to live. Yeah. Guys, don't trust these people. Come on, wake up. Bye now.